Dear friends, you might find it very interesting to know, or not know, that Franciscan spirituality embraces an integrated spiritual ecology. How is that? Well, you'll know from the life story of Francis, a 13th century mystic, great teacher, who was inspired by his love of God to embrace God through the natural world. So what legacy has he left us? Well, today, in my fancy dress, I am a member of the Teo community of St. Francis. Though we are Christian-based, many of our members are Christian, because we heard the call of Francis to reach out to all faiths and none. And that might sound very, very strange, that a Christian group of Franciscans, part of an online community, should reach out to other beliefs. Why not? Francis did. He was a friend of the Sufis. But how does Francis integrate a spiritual ecology? Well, let's look at this in some detail. Francis of Assisi, in his living of the gospel of Jesus Christ to the full, gives an example of 4 ecologies. The first ecology is an environmental ecology, living in harmony with creation and nature, with Mother Nature, with Gaia, and all the elements in the animal kingdom. Franciscan spirituality is also a social ecology, embracing all people as brothers and sisters, regardless of their belief, their colour, their status, or sexual orientation. It's a spiritual ecology in praise of the Father, Mother God, as creator of all things, not just of things Christian or Buddhist or Hindu or Sikh, but all things. And finally, it's an interfaith, interspiritual, interreligious ecology, inviting all soul seekers of truth to come and embrace a new concept of living practical spirituality in the modern world, regardless of one's religious persuasion. And there's the challenge. And throughout history, Francis has been at the forefront of integrating God's vision to his heart. And he never singled out a brother or sister and ridiculed them. No, he embraced them through love. And that is the core of the Teo community of St. Francis, where we're trying to marry all 4 ecologies in our daily service to a loving God. And though God has many names, Vishnu, Ganesh, Krishna, it is the one God. And Francis left us a legacy of love. He demonstrated that even right up to the last moment of his death. And wherever he went, he left energetic footprints of a love, an insatiable thirst for his God, for Jesus, the barefoot Galilean. His life of simplicity would certainly challenge many today in this modern world who can't live without their iPhone, their iPod, their iMac, their internet access, or their mobile phone. But Francis has a message for you and for me. Surrender your heart to love. Because once you surrender your heart to divine love, then the Spirit of God comes upon you. The same Spirit that came upon Mother Mary when she was told that she was to conceive the Messiah. And today, as a brother within the Teo community of St. Francis, we take the message of Francis to our hearts seriously, because he's inviting us to step outside mainstream religion, but not lose our belief in a loving God. To step outside and look from the outside in and learn from all the mistakes that have been made in the name of God. And though many have been called to embrace a loving God in their ministry, whether as a rabbi, an imam, a priest, a monk, a nun, or a holy man or woman, human nature does interfere with that beautiful God-given gift. And ego often kicks in. And before long, one enters the downward spiral of self-adulation, of putting emphasis on the spoken word rather than on the meaning behind the word. Francis epitomized the language of love because he was in love with God, and his love survived all these centuries. You could say he was one of God's great pop stars. He had a following that could certainly leave a lot of our modern rock musicians standing cold in the wings. Many who became disillusioned by the church back in the 13th century. God had a plan, and he raised up a young man who renounced everything to follow his heart. He even won over the Saracens, the Muslims, and they loved him. Why? They knew he was a Christian. But the one thing they loved about him was his respect for himself, for nature, and for a supreme being of love. Francis didn't go around preaching hellfire and damnation. Like many missionaries, Francis showed it in how he lived his 4 ecologies. Like the Teo community that he established in 2008. You could say I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But being at a wedding in Florence in April 2008, I became overwhelmed with the desire to take the long train journey from Florence to Assisi. And we set off very early in the morning at 6 o'clock to get to Assisi. And I wasn't particularly impressed with all the cattle, the conveyor belt religion. As one service started, another finished. I found that it just didn't resonate with me. I wanted to go somewhere simple and quiet, somewhere peaceful. And there I found in the bowels of the cathedral at Assisi, the beautiful place of Francis' birthplace. There in front of his tomb, I knew why I had to take that journey. But I had a choice like you. I could have just walked away, lit a few candles, said a few prayers. But the message was loud and clear. Restore God's children. Reach out to those who are hurting and wounded, who've been alienated by God's people. Establish a lay monastic community, inviting brothers and sisters of different faiths to share their love of the one true God, the same God, and become ecologists. Respect the earth, respect each other, embrace God through the elements in the natural world. Work in harmony with nature. Become a vibrant presence of love. Work with Mother Earth and have a reverence for the sacred. That is the greatest prayer of Francis. And being a Franciscan involves being an ecologist and embracing eco-sustainability and about educating people to be happy.